My guest today is Anthony Mir-Haidari, and we're looking at the return of risk. And Anthony, we have seen not only a return of risk generally, but an appetite for it now by investors. What do you make of that?
Right, yeah, I mean, over the last few years, there's kind of been this big seeking of risk. We had the recessionary low, and then as soon as things looked they were getting better, the world wasn't ending. We weren't going to go back to the caves with our gold and our guns.
Well, maybe not yet.
Right, yeah. Yeah, it could possibly happen. But now, I mean, and then everybody's like, okay, it's getting better. Let's go out and seek out the riskiest assets and get the most upside. And so that was mostly overseas. Countries like China and Brazil had the highest growth rates. And so everybody went over there. And now you're seeing a little bit of a retraction away from risk as people are reminded that a lot of these countries, there's some built-in risks, political risk, currency risk, a lot of these things that investors just weren't thinking about, or they didn't think were going to be a big deal, that the positives outweigh the negatives, and now that's kind of switching back towards more negative.
Well, there's an old saying that Wall Street remembers nothing and forgets everything. Did we forget the credit risk that got us into the financial crisis of 2008?
Right, that's a great example. It's, people, everybody was so excited about these new mortgage securities. Yes. Home prices could only go up.
Right.
People forgot about credit risk. And then the Lehman Brothers collapsed. People said, you know what, this is something I need to pay attention to. Counterparty risk was another one. A lot of the brokerages were lending to like Bear Stearns and Lehman and said, these guys they're solid. Well, maybe not. And now investors are being reminded of political risk and currency risk. If you invest in a country like Egypt or a country like Vietnam or Thailand, some of these really high-risk countries, you don't know what's going to happen to the government. Thailand had a coup d'etat a few years ago. Military kicked out the prime minister. Egypt, you're seeing protesters in the street demanding the ouster of their president. And with currency, like if you invest in a country like Brazil and you're getting a 5% return, well, you have to factor in what's the U.S. dollar doing against the Brazilian real. If the dollar's rising against the real, then that's going to eat into your actual take-home return. So these are all things investors need to start considering again.
So just don't focus on the return. Look at risk.
Right, exactly.
Anthony, thanks for stopping by.
Thank you.
My guest has been Anthony Mir-Haidari. You're watching the MoneyShow.com video network.